Nana ke erima ke ma story o. Kapuna no story na ke erima ke oiriana. Mei aya imei wa ane ma pani kor yuka puna marea wodo kabe oreke ane doctor wane. Ane ma wana iwaya imei wo pani orane u ba ke pitane ane bana antiveleri ma umiki ane ka aero yake urstatiri. Enari eu yake diari enari wane ma uno eure Dr. Lin ane ma wana ene pa irino ayor mayoranora kur amu yake oye ma wana au yake ai kur ama ai mayane opera ure bereki or dokori ayo ai mayane opera bereki mbana ora adai mikiri ane oni mikiri mbana umeroro dia ma boire oh dokter aye mera we ayoro dokter aye mera ko ai mayane raira we oroko okay eno moreni imiki meya ayo meya dai mora we estate aro meino engoko Omer ai meira rawa o
I wanted to have an interesting life, and I wanted to have a satisfying life, and I wasn't interested in any of the things that money can buy. I felt the doctors very rarely starve to death. There'll always be something to buy me a crust. I could have applied for good jobs with lots of money, but I didn't. I wanted to go somewhere else where other people didn't go, and where I would see things other people hadn't seen. I like novelty and changes and adventures and that type of thing. And that's what I built my life on. And so all the rest that just happened, this beautiful kapuna, beautiful guava trees and things, all the rest just came from that one decision to go to new and interesting and difficult places. It's exciting. You look around and you say, when I came here, all this was bush. And now I look out at the lovely grass. Isn't that wonderful? Exciting, happy, satisfying. What more could you want? I think it is different from what other people would value, perhaps. After I finished my training in Dunedin in New Zealand, everyone said, now you'll go to England, of course, because if you wanted to get a higher degree, an English one was usually thought to be an essential one. And I said, no, I'm not going to England. Oh, but you've got good marks. You could easily get into a good school and get a good degree from an important school. And that would give you openings into big, important jobs with lots of money. And a nice house and a nice car, probably, or something or other. But I said, no, I wasn't planning to go to England. And so I went to tropical medicine school instead. I was born in the year 1925. I had a brother and sister older than me, Cecil and John. We lived on a sheep farm called Ahituti. It's in the Waimata Valley out of Gisborne. My father was a very good sheep farmer, and my sister Cecil took after him and my brother too. And they were very, very interested in all the sheep farming. Whereas I was no good with sheep. I couldn't tell one sheep from another. whereas they could look at 10 sheep and say, remember that one had 2 lambs last year, and remember this one over here, it fell down the creek, whereas I couldn't tell one sheep from the other. So all my interest went to reading medical books and reading about missionaries in India and thinking I'm not needed on the farm here, I can do what I like. So when I said I want to be a doctor, at first my family were very shocked because Tumblersons were never doctors. Tumblersons are sheep farmers. But they finally said, oh well, there's no harm in being a doctor. If she wants to, she can. But I was very much on my own. Nobody was interested in being a doctor. In my family, they were very much sheep farmers. But how did one become a doctor? Well, first of all, I wrote to the University of New Zealand and said, where do you go to train as a doctor? And they said, you have to go to Dunedin. There was nothing in Auckland at that time. Do we know anyone in Dunedin? Oh, somebody here knows somebody in Dunedin. Perhaps they could meet you. I went to Dunedin, and I wore rather funny clothes, and I didn't talk like things. And a girl she wasn't training as a doctor, she was training in the university, though. She saw me and she said, that girl's a country girl and doesn't know anything about the city or anything about anything. I think I ought to make friends with her and help her. And that was Lin Calvert. And so she took me under her wing and explained how you did things in the big city and looked after me. And she invited me home to her house for the Saturday weekend. And she said, Peter will take you home. He's my brother. He's been away in the war as a navigator in the Air Force, and he's just come home. So he took me home in the car, and everyone said it began from then. We wrote to church and Presbyterian church. They said, we don't have any medical work in Papua New Guinea. But the LMS, the London Missionary Society, is looking for a doctor. And it's for a place called Kapuna in the Gulf. But it's very wild and full of M's, mosquitoes, malaria, and mud. And we don't recommend it, really. But by this time, I'd met Peter and we were married. We got engaged while he was still training. He was 2 years behind me. And as soon as he completed his training, the next weekend we got married. He said, that's just the one place I'd like to go to. We both agreed that this would be an interesting place to have our children and grow up with.
Ikirimane, ene pairi auni, Bubu Mei, e pairi ni pairi.
Impression we had was relief that it was clean, fresh, unspoiled, and the people were so welcoming, and they accepted us straight away and welcomed us in their homes, and they brought their local foods and were excited about everything, and the children accepted them quickly, and everything was just so easy and right and pleasant. I felt we were making no sacrifice at all by coming. We're like people who've been away and are now united again, and I was very happy to see each other. I came from a farm, and I came used to having to do everything for yourself and and it was just the same. I wasn't aware of. I've had to make big changes in my life. What had happened in New Zealand, and I think in Australia too, happened here, that the Europeans coming in brought their diseases with them, and measles was the biggest killer of the Maori and the Aborigines in Australia, and PNGs too. Thousands of people died from measles. So the people were very concerned to see the loss of life, and so they set up Kapuna Hospital. Started at 6:30, we'd have a cup of cocoa usually, and then we'd come home to breakfast at 9 o'clock perhaps, whenever we finished. We didn't have a timetable. You worked till you'd seen everybody in that ward. And so Peter and I would alternate for innings. What he couldn't do, I would fit in with. So he did adults and children, and I did outpatients and TB. And we kept to that pretty much always. And we would have a different ward each day. There was A, B, C, and outpatient. We've always had daily prayers in the hospital, usually nightly prayers too. We always had a teaching time at least twice a day. We've been part of other people's experiments, and the float plane was one very good experiment that we had here. It was very exciting, having a plane come down easily for some weeks and would take 10 trips out in one day, 5 trips out and 5 trips back. And so they would go to distant villages and come back again in 2 hours when you'd finished seeing everybody and bring you home again. And it was very exciting. We accomplished an awful lot of immunizations. That was a very good time of immunizations. The whole place was well covered. And this, mostly when you read about the 34%, 46% still getting epidemics. We've had no epidemics for years and years and years because we are completely covered for immunization. Going out on patrol was a big job because you had to see all the antenatal people, all the mothers expecting babies. You had to treat all the skin diseases, and particularly scabies and chipoma, skin fungus diseases, and all the cuts and sores and ulcers. And you didn't usually get to bed before 9 o'clock every night because you had to treat the sores several times because that was your only chance. Penicillin was a tremendous help when you got the injection of penicillin. That was a great blessing. And enormous numbers of people have been saved by penicillin. There were no aid posts when we came, but he set up 15 biggest villages. But that made a tremendous difference, those 15 aid posts. I think one of the attitudes that we've tried to build up is that being in hospital can be fun. It's not a time of sadness and worry and fear, but you can carry on your normal life. The way the hospital is built encourages people not to stay in bed, but always move out into the sunshine on the veranda and watch what is going on. There's a basketball court in front of the hospital, and they love watching the people playing games, and they love listening to politicians, and anybody who likes to give a talk can always go out there. They're going to give you a talk, and people will all gather and listen, whether it's Christian talk or political talk or almost anything. We encourage visitors. We have no visiting hours. We have no rules, hardly at all. All they have to do is take their medicines. And they eat whenever they feel like it, and they eat when they've got food, and they eat when they cook. But we don't cook for them at all. and we leave all these things to their own natural customs and ways of doing things. And so they feel quite at home here, quite relaxed. But all this avoids us saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. The only thing we say is don't spit, and that's about the only rule we have. When we came in 1954, there was no proper training course and no qualification. After some years, I couldn't say how many, every year they put it up, this is the 51st anniversary or something like that. So it was soon after we came, and we have kept it up ever since then. Every year we have graduates. We have those that fail, but we are hopeful for them, and they repeat it and usually pass the second time. So we made a high standard. They had to be capable of looking after sick people correctly. It was no, oh, well, they just done the class, I'll just pass them. No. We started failing people. That was a new thing, to fail people. And people said, in Papua New Guinea, we never fail people. It's so discouraging for them. That's what the Europeans said to me when we said we're going to fail them. They said, no, you must never fail people. They don't like being failed and they're unhappy. And we said, but what if they can't do the work? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just let them have a try. We said, no, it's medical work, and medical work is serious, and people's lives are at stake, and we're going to fail people, and we did. But that improves the standard tremendously. We do have family planning, and people have reduced their families from about 10 to about 5, which is a very good idea. We were so happy here because we saw so many changes. Kapuna has grown. When we came here, the bush came down as far as here. All this was bush. There was one bunch of bananas. And we saw Kapuna open up and develop, and the food got better and better. You could see, can't you? When we came, there was nothing. We got lawnmowers, and that made a tremendous difference too. The lawnmower really set them free from the bush knife and all the men chopping away at it every day. So, and the power for the light. So the big changes all come and blessed us. So we didn't feel sorry for ourselves. People said, how can you stay up there so long? Oh, it's fun, it's good, it's interesting. We've had many very sick patients here. This man he saw a canoe coming and he saw his enemy in it, and the enemy was standing up with a bow and arrow, and he thought the man was coming to shoot him with the bow and arrow, and so he threw his spear at him. And the spear went into his chest. So they came quickly to Kapuna, and the spear had gone right into his chest. We were able to cut the handle off the spear, but the spear was still inside the chest. And we had to push the spear out of his chest, pushing it right through his ribs. And we were able to do this with great difficulty. I think that fellow recovered, actually, that one. He was the kind of thing you'd say, oh, he will die. He will die from tetanus, or he'll die from blood loss, or he'll die from pain, or he'll die from shock. But people here every now and then surprise you and insist on living. It is very satisfying doing this kind of medical work because of the people's trust in you and their faith in you and their faith in themselves. And so people bring them here no matter how sick they are. The skin diseases used to be very, very bad here. Scabies was the worst. Scabies is caused by a small animal called a mite that has 6 legs. And it digs into your skin and makes a little tunnel and lays its eggs there. And while it's digging the tunnel, you're scratching it, but it doesn't do any good. The little saliva eggs and come out. And this little mite could be cured by scabies lotion, but people couldn't get the people to put it on. Well, for 6 years, I did nothing but treat scabies here. I went down 3 times a day and put scabies lotion on the people with scabies, which was almost everybody. And we conquered scabies, and there's no scabies now. So it was just a matter of persistence and never giving up. And experiencing, if I got one scabies bite, I've got a scabies. I couldn't sleep. And here were these people riddled with scabies, hands and feet and abdomens and breasts and axilla, and oh dear. And so they were very cooperative when we said, we can cure this if only you will put this medicine on enough times. And today there's no scabies. Sleeping at night, everybody together, old, young, sick, and everyone, was a terrible, easy way to catch TB. And it was the dose of TB you got that made the difference to whether you lived with glands or whether you died with bleeding. And he'd cough, and the blood would pour out, and he'd die. You couldn't do anything. But we taught them the same thing. You must not sleep close together where you cough over. And I think that was one of the things that really helped people to understand that the answer lay in sleeping close to people. At night they coughed up all this pus. God has given us all we need to do all He expects of us. And even if your patients die sometimes, and they will, of course, you don't need to feel discouraged. My husband, Peter, was shocked one day when he went to the toilet and passed a whole lot of blood. And we both knew this was very serious. And he went in to have x-rays and found he had cancer of the colon, and he needed an operation, which he had. But they said it is probably already in the liver. So we knew right from the start that he wasn't going to have much longer with us. So he came out one day to me and said, what we feared would happen has happened. My liver's getting too big. He said, no point in going back to New Zealand because I couldn't work as a doctor there anymore. I'm too sick. But I can still help here at Capona. And he went down to the hospital and did all the usual work he did there until he felt too sick. And one day he came home and said, I'm not going to the hospital anymore. I don't feel well enough. So after that, he stayed in the house. After a while, he said, I'm not getting out of bed. I don't feel well enough anymore. So he stayed in bed, and we took care of him, and we could see the liver was getting bigger and bigger. And then finally he said, don't put any more drips in, just leave me. So we took the drip out because he couldn't take food. And we just sat with him. And I sat with him as much as I could, and he just went into a coma, went to sleep. And then he just stopped breathing, and that was all. So we were close together right to the end, and the people were very happy that he should be buried here. I think through his life and example, they learned a lot as to you don't need a great big crying funeral. He was buried in a mat. And I said, well, keep that place and I'll have it afterwards. And they all cried. And I said, oh, it might be a long time yet. And it has been a long time. he had a good life, and he did all that was required of him, and he loved the Lord. And so I have always had a confidence to say, oh, we'll see each other again. It's only good night, it's not goodbye. I just knew how he was feeling and so happy in heaven and all the people he was meeting, and I was envying him. I think as a doctor you begin to believe that all this is very true. Everyone dies. A happy death is a great blessing. Life is not always to be clung to. For many years I was the only doctor here, and we just went from patient to patient. I just had to work harder. You couldn't carry. There was no alternative. There was nobody else to do the work, and so you just ate when you could. And I had someone else in the kitchen to cook. It's amazing how much can be done in medical work if you train up your young and inexperienced but eager to learn ones and trust them with it. Always do everything with prayer, because God saves you and a lot of worry and anxiety. But he's saying, just do what you can, and leave the rest to me. And I think we, by doing what we could and not getting worried about what we couldn't, is the best advice. Keep calm. People have died before, and don't get upset. Don't take it to heart, and don't let any error of blame. I can't think anyone has ever blamed anybody, and I put that down to always going when you're called. Always. If you go and you can't do anything, people understand. If you don't go, they are unhappy. But just that one rule I kept, and I've never had a complaint. And when we said to the people, what will you do if we leave? They said, we'll close everything except the outpatients. We'll close all the inpatients. That is what they said. It was the closeness relationship we had with the people here that we began to feel of them as that we had a responsibility for them. They were our people. We couldn't just walk out and leave them. I became at peace with these choices, that I felt that whatever God wants is always the best. And I'm very happy in what is happening here. And I can't think of if I could be any happier back in New Zealand. So it wasn't a temptation or a difficult thing. It was just, what does God want me to do? And I'll be happy whatever he wants me to do. If he'd wanted me to go back to New Zealand, I think I could have gone back. But after a while, it became obvious that even as I got older here, there's always things you can do here. There's always people you can help. I think having some sort of hobby, like gardening, is almost essential, because the results are slow from a lot of the things we do, like TV, and seeing some results quickly of something, and that's what you get from growing flowers. You see the results quickly. Fruit, you see the tree growing, you see the flowers. I think that you get your most of your comforting and comforting yourself is from seeing results in small ways. You're helping someone to read, and you find them sitting down on the ward reading a book. Wonderful. Now people say, your yellow hibiscus is growing in someone else's garden and covered with flowers. I feel so happy. I've tried to go outside to work every day for years, and some days are too wet or too muddy and I can't do it. But mostly I try to pull up at least one weed. I think it was about Peter and I being both doctors. One would encourage the other when you got discouraged. And also the happiness of our children. They all learned the language, they played with their friends, they kept helping us and telling us good things. And Valerie, when I said you must go back to New Zealand and go to school, and she said, but I could already read and write and make sago, and that's all you need to know. And she couldn't see why she should go back to New Zealand. And I said, oh, you'll see one day. And when she came back as a doctor, I said to everybody, this is what she said to me, I can make sago, I don't need anything else. When they said, why haven't you left? I said, well, God told us to come here, and I'm not going unless God tells me to go. And I've been praying about it, and he hasn't told me to go. One couple said, we didn't expect you to go, but I think they didn't mean that in the right way. They meant you're used to not doing what you're told. I'll be absolutely frank, I like being here because the cold in New Zealand bothers me. And I like it warm, and I like bananas, and I like pineapples, and I like it here. So I'm afraid it was partly personal motivation. I didn't want to go. But it was also because you get interested in the people's lives and their children, and I just felt at home here. But it was also that I felt that we have a duty to, as Christians, to help the needy rather than to help the well-off. And I felt people in New Zealand, no one was suffering from lack of doctors. But here they would. So it was several things. I just thought I couldn't go. As you say, not many people stay 60 years. But the longer you stay, the less dogmatic you get and the less proud you get. And the feeling, it was all God anyway who did it. All the good bits for him. To give up any idea of praise or reward, once you've given up that, and to have, it's only between you and the patient and God, it's not a problem. But if you're looking for recognition, yes, you'll have a problem. Without love, and you're only doing it for a sense of duty, it won't work. I don't feel God expects us to change the world, and I don't expect he expects us to change anybody. We can only change ourselves. And if we just conscientiously keep doing what we feel he's told us to do, it'll always work out. I don't have any doubts about that. And I don't have any regrets of any kind. Papua New Guinea, you don't get the sack. You don't be forced to retire at 65. As in most people's active life is cut short by either sickness or by the rules, which is at 65 you must make room for the next generation coming on. But here there were no rules unless you made them yourself. And so that's how I kept going for so long, because nobody stopped me, and because I enjoyed it so much, and because people have always been happy you can see the way they act even now. They come and give me a hug, or they say thank you, or they share something, or say this is my daughter and you delivered her. And people in Papua New Guinea don't label you as too old. I've been 60 years here at Capona, and I know very little about the highlands and very little about some of the coastal things. This country is different in different places, and I sometimes wish I could do another 60 years and do it all in the highlands. That would be very interesting. If I was giving advice to the world, I would say, if there are two choices and one is more adventurous than the other, do the most adventurous one. If there's two choices and one of them is more difficult than the other, do the more difficult one. I think happiness comes not for people who look for it, but happiness comes from doing what satisfies you, and so you never have any regret. I feel God's led me, and He's done as much as He could through me. It's not perfect by any means.
Hi, my name's Jono McLeod.
I'm Destiny McLeod.
We are missionary doctors over in South Sudan. We've got 3 daughters, Zoe, who's 5, Alicia, who's 3, and Shiloh, who is just 2 months old. And for the last 3 years, we've been in the town of Tonj, which is in the middle of South Sudan. We help run a medical clinic there, which looks after pregnant mothers and children. And my job in the clinic is to help look after the children. So last year we saw almost 40,000 patients. So yeah, that keeps us busy.
I'm the daughter of Valerie, who is the daughter of Lin and Peter Calvert. And I feel so lucky to have such a heritage and to have the legacy of my grandparents' lives as part of my life, and I feel that's made an enormous impact on who I am as a person and what I've chosen to do with my life. The thing that inspires me most about Grandma and Granddad is the faithfulness of their service in PNG. And I hope that we can have that same heart of faithfulness where we're serving. I know that Grandma and Granddad went to PNG because there was a big need there, but they've stayed there because they've made it their home and they've come to love the people and become part of the culture. Our generation is the kind of people who like to do things for a year or two and then move on. But what I've seen through Grandma is that you can make a huge impact if you're faithful to where God has put you. And we've found ourselves falling in love with this dry, poor area of Tonge where we are, and with the Dinka people. And we've given our third daughter Shiloh a Dinka name for her middle name, and we'd just like to be there for as long as God wants us there. And we would just love to see what Grandma's seen in her life, just see things really change and see our area impacted with the gospel and the love of God, just like she's seen it.
Grandma has also been a real inspiration for me. I remember when Destiny and I were dating, I got given a copy of the book that she wrote, Let the Fire Burn. I remember reading the pages and I just couldn't put it down, just absorbing the awesome testimonies about what God had done in Papua New Guinea. And it really made me jealous inside with a holy jealousy that I want to see what you've seen. And I believe that God wants all of us to see that. I believe that God wants all of us to see his power at work and to be a part of his Holy Spirit moving and changing hearts and transforming society. Grandma's also really inspired me because, I mean, like Destiny has already said, of her faithfulness. When I've been to Papua New Guinea twice, and both times I've come into Kapuna, and I've just been in awe of the spirit, the atmosphere, the culture that is within the place. You know, there's just such a hunger amongst all the different activities that are going on, the different programs, all the different groups that are there for different reasons, but everyone has one common passion, and that's for Jesus. And that is the result of so many years of faithfully sowing in prayer and sowing in church and sowing in, and that's come as a result of all those years of faithful service. So we are right at the start of that journey, and it seems like there's still a long way to go, but having seen someone who's been there before us and has seen God move powerfully and bring transformation, it gives us incredible hope and it gives us incredible faith that God is going to do the same through us as well.
One other thing, Grandma's a charger. She's still going strong at 92, and I don't know many others who I could say that about. So I want to be like that as well. Thanks, Grandma.